All right, let's jump into this Cowboys and Buccaneers game, huh?
Yeah, sounds good.
It's like a pretty simple win for the Cowboys, right?
Yeah, on the surface.
But you flagged this one for us because the Cowboys were already out of the playoff picture.
Right.
So what's so interesting about this game?
I mean, it wasn't just some end of season throwaway game.
Okay.
There's actually there's a lot going on here. We've got a coach who's might be, fighting for his job. We got a division title that's up in the air,
Oh.
and so many questions about like what this means for both these teams, moving forward.
Okay, so before we get into all that, can you kind of like set the scene for us?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
how did this game actually play out?
Well, so the Cowboys, they came out strong, right? Big lead at halftime.
Hmm.
Uh, Cooper Rush, he was starting for Dak Prescott. Prescott's injured.
Right.
Rush had a really great first half.
Okay.
But the Buccaneers, they're led by Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
They weren't going to just, lay down.
Sure.
So they came back,
Yeah.
made it a really, really close game.
Oh, so it was a nail biter.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right down to the wire.
Yeah. And speaking of close games, you send over some articles that mentioned a fumble recovery by Daron Bland
Right.
that sealed the win for the Cowboys, right?
Yeah. A huge play by Bland, forced the fumble and recovered it.
Wow. Sounds like their defense really stepped up.
Yeah, they had to. I mean, especially with all his injuries.
Right. They were missing, like, it was Dak Prescott, Zach Martin, DeMarcus Lawrence, Trevon Diggs, Eric Kendricks.
Oh, and CeeDee Lamb and Jalen Tolbert, too.
Wow. That's like half their starting lineup.
It's crazy, right? Almost their whole starting lineup's out with injuries.
Yeah. I mean, it really makes you think, like, what if they'd stayed healthy?
Yeah.
Could they have been Super Bowl contenders?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question.
It's pretty impressive that their backups could pull off a win like this.
Definitely, especially against, a team like the Bucs who are, fighting for a playoff spot.
Right. It really shows you, like, how deep their roster is.
Yeah, I mean, it really does. And what's really interesting is if you dig into the stats a little bit,
Yeah.
the Buccaneers, they actually outplayed the Cowboys in some ways.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like total yards, first downs.
Huh.
But the Cowboys, I mean, they made the big plays when it counted,
Okay, yeah.
especially on defense. Micah Parsons, even though he was kind of banged up himself,
Right.
he was still a real problem for the Bucs.
And we can't forget about Brandon Aubrey.
Oh, yeah.
The kicker nailed two 58-yard field goals.
That's impressive. Clutch kicking.
I know, right? I mean, special teams, they don't always get the love, but
Right.
those were huge.
The game changers.
Okay, so the Cowboys played well, but what about the Buccaneers? How did this loss impact them?
Well, so the Bucs losing this game,
Mhm.
combined with the Atlanta Falcons winning
Oh, okay.
against the Giants, that completely changes the whole NFC South race.
Really?
Yeah. So now the Bucs and the Falcons, they're tied for the division lead, both 8 and 7.
Hold on, I thought the Buccaneers were like running away with the division.
They were. But see, the Falcons, they swept the Buccaneers
Oh.
in their head-to-head games this year.
Oh, okay.
So that means Atlanta, they have the tiebreaker.
Gotcha.
So if they both, win out, end the season with the same record, Falcons win the division.
Wow. So the Buccaneers, they could actually like miss the playoffs entirely.
Yeah, I mean it's a real possibility now. It all comes down to these last two games.
Wow, the pressure's on.
Definitely.
Speaking of pressure, one of the big storylines around this game was Mike McCarthy's future as the Cowboys coach.
Right.
The articles you sent over, they mentioned that he's in like the last year of his contract,
Yeah.
and there's been a lot of talk about whether he's coming back next season.
Yeah, lots of speculation. This is where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm all ears. Give me the scoop.
All right, well, so even though the Cowboys, had a rough start to the season,
Yeah.
and they're, out of the playoffs, Jerry Jones, the owner,
Right.
he's recently said, publicly that he supports McCarthy.
Hmm.
And then they win this game against the Bucs
Yeah.
with all the injuries and everything.
Right.
I mean, it kind of makes you think that, maybe McCarthy's got a real shot at staying.
Okay.
There's even been talk of contract extension.
But wait, but haven't Cowboys fans been like calling for McCarthy's head for weeks now?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, wouldn't it be like super controversial to bring him back?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Some people, they say that even with this late season kind of, surge,
Right.
it doesn't erase all the problems they had earlier.
Hmm.
But then other people, they say, look, he deserves credit for keeping them competitive. With all the injuries and everything, it's a tough call.
And some fans might say, hey, McCarthy's just lucky
Oh, yeah.
that all these backups came in and played well, Ray.
Hmm.
Is there any truth to that, do you think?
Well, I mean, there's always luck involved in football.
Right, right.
But I don't think you can, completely discount McCarthy's role in this win,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, he kept the team focused,
Yeah.
kept them motivated,
Yeah, okay.
even when things weren't looking good.
Yeah.
And he made some really smart adjustments during the game,
Right.
put his players in a position to succeed.
That's true. So is this win enough to save McCarthy's job? What do you think?
It's hard to say for sure. Jerry Jones, he's kind of unpredictable,
Yeah.
but one thing's for sure, this win, it definitely makes McCarthy's future, a lot more complicated. And maybe, just maybe, it's given him a chance to stay in Dallas. This whole situation really, it really shows you just how deep the Cowboys roster is.
Yeah.
They put a lot of resources into building a really good team.
Right.
You can see that even with all those injuries, the backups, they can really play.
So does this mean we should rethink how we see the Cowboys, as a team? Could they have been Super Bowl contenders if they hadn't had all these injuries?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
It's tempting to look at this win and think, oh, what could have been?
Right.
They were a top contender before the season started. A lot of people had them picked to go all the way.
Yeah.
And and this game, it really shows that they still have the talent to be a really dangerous team.
Okay.
But at the same time, you can't rewrite history.
Right.
Those injuries happened. And they definitely hurt the Cowboys this year.
That's true, yeah. But on the other hand, we have the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
Who, they look like they're on their way to winning the division.
Right.
And now all of a sudden, it's not so certain.
Right.
What happened to them in this game? Did they just have an off night?
Well, one thing that really jumps out at me is their defense.
Yeah.
They've been so good for so long.
Mm-hmm.
But against the Cowboys, they looked really vulnerable.
Okay.
They couldn't stop Cooper Rush in the passing game.
Right.
And their run defense wasn't much better.
Yeah, the articles I read pointed out that statistically the Bucs actually outperformed the Cowboys in a few categories.
Yeah, that's right.
But they still lost. So how do you make sense of that?
That's a great point. And it shows that, sometimes these games just come down to making those big plays when it matters.
Hmm.
The Cowboys, they were really opportunistic on defense. They forced turnovers at crucial moments. And the Bucs, they kind of seemed to falter under pressure.
Especially in the second half, right?
Yeah, exactly. It felt like they lost their composure a little bit when the Cowboys started coming back.
Yeah, maybe the pressure of, trying to hold on to that division lead got to them. They were expected to win this game.
Yeah, maybe. When a team, has that target on their back, everyone expects them to win.
Right.
That can definitely affect how they play, especially in a close division race.
Makes sense.
The Bucs might have, let that pressure get to them, and that led to some mistakes, some missed opportunities that we saw.
And now their playoff hopes are in jeopardy.
Yeah, they really need to win these next two games if they want to make the playoffs. It's a really dramatic turn of events.
I know. It's crazy how quickly things can change in the NFL.
I know, right? One week you're at the top of the division, and the next you're fighting for your life.
Exactly. It's what makes the league so fun to watch.
For sure. So looking ahead, what are the big takeaways from this game? What should we be watching for in the next couple weeks?
Okay. Well, for the Cowboys, this win has got to be huge for their morale.
Yeah.
It shows that they can compete with anybody, even when they're shorthanded. And it also raises some questions about their quarterback situation.
Oh, right.
Cooper Rush, he played really well.
He did, yeah.
So now the question is, what role does he have moving forward?
Right. That's going to be an interesting conversation. And what about the Bucs?
Yeah.
I feel like this game's got to be a wake-up call for them, right?
Yeah, for sure. They can't take anything for granted.
Right.
Their defense, they got to get back to playing at a high level. They need to find that swagger,
Yeah.
that confidence.
If they want to make a deep playoff run.
Absolutely. And we can't forget about the NFC South, right? I mean, it's anyone's game at this point.
Yeah, you're right. The Falcons, they might be in the lead right now, but there's still 2 games left.
Right.
Anything can happen.
I know. I can't wait to see how it all plays out.
Me too.
Ah.
This is going to be a fun finish to the regular season.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, at first I thought this game was pretty straightforward.
Right.
But there's so much more going on beneath the surface.
Yeah. I mean, that's the beauty of taking a deep dive into anything. Right. There's always more than meets the eye. And in this case, I mean, we've uncovered so much. There's drama, there's intrigue, there's unanswered questions.
You got that right. So let's bring it back to the Cowboys for a second.
Mm-hmm.
What does this win tell us about their future? Is this a sign of good things to come? Mm-hmm. Or was this just like a one-off? And how will the Buccaneers respond to this setback? I mean, are they gonna fold under pressure, or are they gonna rise to the challenge?
Those are the $1 million questions, right?
Yeah.
We'll just have to wait and see. But one thing's for sure, this story's not over yet.
I agree. I can't wait to see what happens next. And speaking of captivating stories, we can't wrap up this deep dive without talking about Baker Mayfield. I mean, he's had kind of a crazy season himself, right?
Up and down for sure.
Yeah. The articles you sent over, they mentioned that, he had a decent game against the Cowboys, even threw a touchdown.
Yeah, he did all right.
So, I mean, where does that leave him in the whole Buccaneers quarterback situation? Mm-hmm. Is he the guy for them moving forward, or are they going to be looking for someone else in the offseason?
I mean, it's a good question, and there's no easy answer.
Yeah.
Despite the Bucs' struggles this season, Mayfield's actually put up some pretty decent numbers. He's thrown for 34 touchdowns.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
It is. And some people think that, the Bucs' defense has been a bigger problem than Mayfield.
Really?
Yeah, like their inconsistencies on defense have hurt them more than Mayfield's play.
So you're saying there's a chance he could be their long-term quarterback?
I think it's definitely a possibility.
Yeah.
I mean, he's shown flashes of real talent.
Okay.
And if they can get him some more help, especially on defense,
yeah.
I think he could really thrive in Tampa Bay.
Okay.
But the Bucs, they have a lot of decisions to make in the offseason.
Right.
So we'll just have to wait and see what they do at quarterback.
Yeah, it seems like this one game has just opened up a whole bunch of questions. Not just for the Bucs and Baker Mayfield, but for the Cowboys and Mike McCarthy as well.
Right. Well,
it's kind of wild how a game that didn't seem to matter that much.
Yep.
Has created all this intrigue and uncertainty.
I know, it's kind of crazy. And it really speaks to, how unpredictable the NFL is this year. There've been so many upsets, so many surprises.
Right.
It makes it almost impossible to predict what's going to happen next.
Yeah, this game's a perfect example of that. And, beyond the wins and losses and the stats and the playoffs and all that, it's important to remember that this is a human story.
Yeah, you're right.
We're talking about people's careers, people's livelihoods.
Right.
To see a coach like Mike McCarthy, I mean, the guy's won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
To see him fighting for his job after a win like this, I mean, it adds a whole other layer to it,
You're right. It's easy to get caught up in the X's and O's, the strategy.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's about people. People with their own stories and struggles and triumphs.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the Cowboys win to the Bucs struggles to Mike McCarthy's future. But I'm curious, what's the one thing you want our listener to take away from all this? What does it all really mean?
I think the biggest takeaway is that even in a game that didn't really matter for the playoffs, there was still so much drama, so much excitement. It just goes to show you that in the NFL, every game matters. Every performance counts.
Right.
And every storyline has the potential to really grab you.
That's a great point. And with that, we'll leave you to think about all the questions this game has raised.
Yeah.
What does this win mean for the Cowboys?
Right.
Can the Bucs bounce back from this loss? And what's going to happen to Mike McCarthy? Keep those questions in mind as we continue to follow this crazy NFL season.
That's right. You never know what's going to happen next.
Exactly. Until next time.
keep diving deep.